Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Earthly Headlines. Today we're gonna talk about ancient chewing gum and the human DNA they managed to extract from it. Now, a lot of the reason big deal is because it's become an extra source of DNA beyond like 10,000 plus years ago. Whereas before they had to rely on other stuff like bones. Not all fossils have DNA left in them because, as you may know now, if you've been following me, DNA has a shelf life, and a lot of stuff can happen to where it becomes undateable with the current technology that we have. So this ancient chewing gum is actually a big deal once a group of scientists were bright enough to decide to analyze it for DNA. And this chewing gum actually could have easily been discarded way back in the day because the site that they got it at was in 1993 was when the excavation took place. The researchers, the excavators at the time, they had the presence of mind to take care of it, even though they didn't really know what to do with it. And they just kept it. They just sat on it until a little bit later. And by the way, this picture is from the 90s. So someone took this. Was actually developed in a dark room with film, and well, anyway, it wasn't until later that they found that they could extract a bunch of data from this, and a lot of stuff. It yielded a lot of stuff actually. It centers around the first humans who settled in Scandinavia during toward the end of the Mesolithic, which is. For Europe, it lasted between 15,000 to about 5,000 before present. So this is probably more of the middle, toward the end of the middle of the Mesolithic. And just to give you guys an idea of the site before we go on, this was the Altura Glacier, which was part of a giant ice sheet that covered, at its largest extent, covered the British Islands, all of Scandinavia and northern Germany. And northern Poland, all the way into Russia. Here's a better picture that shows the extent. And then here's a different angle. So this is from Svensson et al. 2004. This is their estimation of the ice sheet at the last glacial maximum. The glacier, again, it's just rotated like 90 degrees. And it not only does it cover Scandinavia, but it continues into the Barents Sea, all the way up into the shores of what's now Siberia and such. So why is this important? Well, it's because if you understand that just a few thousand years before this, when this ancient chewing gum was supposedly chewed up and spit out, which was 10,000 years ago, there was a huge ice sheet in the area that could not have sustained any life. No one was living here. So that must mean that there was a population that came in right after, and B, that they had something like chewing gum, this technology, so soon after the ice sheet disappeared. So either these people were just waiting right on the shores to go in and occupy this land, which is highly unlikely because the energy that took to melt all this ice would have rendered anything even in the immediate vicinity just uninhabitable for a short period of time. And by short period of time, I mean probably 1,000 years or so. These people must have come from somewhere else. And that's the premise of that I want you guys to sort of keep in your head as we go through this. And just to visualize it, the melting of the ice sheet, this animated GIF is pretty telling. So it starts with the last glacial maximum right here. And then you can see all the land it occupies, and then it recedes, and then you can see the land coming out. So right after this land, what's now Sweden and pretty much all of Scandinavia, once it becomes above water, then you start having these first Mesolithic settlements here. So where we're focusing now is the western part of Sweden here, and that's where they found the chewing gum. And so remember, that was in the context of the chewing gum was not that long before what we're reading about now. Okay, so anyway, the first humans who settled Scandinavia more than 10,000 years ago left their DNA behind in ancient chewing gum, which is, if you don't know, masticated lumps made from birch bark pitch. So there was a birch forest, by the way, and I think birch grows under certain circumstances, which is also an interesting bit of information. This is shown in a new study conducted at Stockholm University. Few human bones of this age have been found in Scandinavia, and not all of them have preserved enough DNA for archaeogenetic studies. That's what I was talking about, the shortcomings of even finding a dead body from 10,000 plus years ago might not have, odds are the DNA won't be usable. In fact, the DNA from these newly examined chewing gums is the oldest human DNA ever sequenced from this area. So right off the bat, it's the oldest evidence of humans, period, in the area. And B, it's not from bones, it's from the chewing gum. And it was derived from 2 females and 1 male. So either they were all sharing gum, or I don't know how it worked, or they were using the gum to not chew, but maybe do something else. So ancient chewing gum is considered an alternative source for human DNA and possibly a good proxy for human bones in archaeogenetic studies. The pieces come from Husebi Klev, which is an early Mesolithic site on the west coast that I was talking about earlier. So right around here. And the site was completely under a giant sheet of ice a few thousand years before this. The masticates were made out of birch bark tar and used as glue in tool production and other types of technology during the Stone Age. So this tool production, the tools, again, once this glacier receded, people came in pretty quickly, pretty soon after. And they brought with them not just their new genetics, but tools. And the gum is part of the construction of those tools. When per person and Michael went, oh no, let's keep going. This is what it looks like here. And it's really nondescript. I know this is after a bunch of processing. This is not exactly how they found it, but more or less, I mean, you've got to have a really keen eye to even understand that this will be important someday. Remember, they found this in 93. They believe it was spat out at the site 10,000 years ago. The results show that the individual shared close genetic affinity to other hunter-gatherers in Sweden and to early Mesolithic populations from Ice Age Europe. Okay, so what this means is the other hunter-gatherers in Sweden, they were probably part of whatever wave of people came and occupied this land, and they were just scattered about, but they may have all come from the same genetic origin, which is Russia and parts of Siberia. If you've seen the videos that I've done about Finland and the ancient Finns, a portion of their DNA does come from Siberian people, and I don't think it's a surprise that that influx of genetic flow from the east is from the northeast, rather, from Siberia and beyond the Urals here. It's no surprise, I don't think, and this definitely checks out. And to early Mesolithic populations from Ice Age Europe. However, the tools produced at the site were part of the lithic technology brought to Scandinavia from East European plain. Again, plains mean that there are probably people living there and occupying there, which is modern-day Russia. And probably more people from the steppe and all that stuff. And even maybe as these people were related to the steppe people and further east, so maybe even they have Denisovan blood. That might be possible as well. The scenario of a culture and genetic influx into Scandinavia from 2 routes was proposed in earlier studies, and the ancient chewing gum samples provide an exciting link directly between the tools and materials and human genetics. Yeah, that's the other thing about ancient chewing gum samples, and I don't know how regularly they find these, but if it's with any regularity, then there's a lot of data to go back and comb through if they found this and didn't preserve it, or they didn't bother to investigate it. But anyway, it provides another dimension to our understanding of the past. Demography analysis suggests that the genetic composition of a Husebi Kleb individual show more similarity to Western hunter-gatherer populations than Eastern hunter-gatherers. That might be because the Western hunter-gatherers, the influx, they stayed west, and the ones stayed east for whatever reason, and then they split off from there. These Ancient chewing gums have an enormous potential not only for tracing the origin and movement of peoples, but also providing insights into their social relations, diseases, and food. That's huge too. Just finding out what they ate, finding out what diseases they were susceptible to. A lot can be derived, especially with our technology now, a lot can be derived and implied about their day-to-day. Like we can get closer to what their day-to-day was like and how they relate to people around them, and a little bit further than that, their neighbors and their more distant neighbors. And then we can kind of hypothesize from there where they may have moved from, so to speak. Yeah, so anyway, let me know what you guys think about this. If you guys know anything about ancient chewing gum, Scandinavia, any legends of DNA or stories, whatever, of people coming from far off lands and coming into the homeland. If there's anything with that type of motif, let me know, and I'll talk to you guys later.